Today, we're looking at the Atramentis Mint Turquoise. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, the Atramentis Mint Turquoise is a kind of turquoisey teal kind of color. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a cross Bailey with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is nothing special on the first one. It's pushing straight up. We see little hints of a light blue, and then the green's in there, and it gets much darker green towards the top. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And those hints of blue that were in the first chromatography are a little more here. We see a little more of that light blue really across the bottom line than that light green that pushes up into the darker green at the top of the chromatography. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles it very well. It goes from about the extra fine to still an extra fine. It made me at first say maybe after 3 days it's truly seeped into the page. And there, I was very surprised by how well that did with the highlighter. Feel safe using this in a note-taking situation. Water lifted all of the darker tones but left the lighter tones. Not the very light blue that we saw in the chromatography, just a very light shade of this ink. Now, Pen Flush did everything water and more. We do get the beginnings of seeing some of the white of the paper coming through. We can even start to see some of the dots from the Rhodia dot pad. Makes me feel that Pen Flush is all that you're going to need. Bleach, as would be expected, takes it completely off the paper. Does leave a little bit of yellow staining behind, which, you know, we've seen a bunch when it comes to using bleach. But you should not need to use a 1/3 bleach solution. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. The Atramentis Mint Turquoise has a viscosity of 2, making it a wetter ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. The Atramentis Mint Turquoise has an average dry time of 13 seconds, making it just on the edge of normal. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. It's a really neat color, much, not so much turquoise, but it's a really interesting color. The extra fine, slightly lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, some very light shading that's going on. It's very nice. It graduates in and out of its darker areas. Like in it works its way darker and then lighter again. Quick, starts a little light, gets dark, and only the K gets gets light, and then the K gets darker again. In Over, we see it start very light and work its way dark. And it's all very gradual shading, which is quite nice to look at. 8 seconds to dry. Now the medium got to be a darker tone, about the same dark tone that we got with the 1.1. The medium had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading here. No shading whatsoever, unfortunately. Let's see if we can sort of help the camera some. There you go, camera. No shading what's to speak of in the medium. It took 16 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine showed us a little bit of color variation. We did see a little bit of color variation. The medium showed us none. We didn't see any. And the smear test, I don't know that you could recover that if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River, no bleeding. We get ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather, no spread. It has halo in the darker areas, not the lighter areas. So where turquoise is a little darker written than the beginning of Atramentis, it's got some haloing going on there, which is very nice to see. I always enjoy seeing that. No sheen and no shade. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 10 seconds to dry. The medium is a darker tone, again to the darker tone that we saw with the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 20 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows us no color variation. Really not. I mean, there's a couple spots. There is some. There's a little bit. If you like little bit, you like subtle, it's there. We're not seeing it in the scrubby. A little bit more in the writing. The medium, no color variation. We got none up here. And the smear test, you could not recover this if you smeared it. Rhodia. Rhodia gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer little bits of shading. Like the beginning of Mint is a little bit lighter than the NT. In turquoise, we have a couple spots that are a little bit lighter than others. I know that I can see this is difficult to see on camera. It just is not particularly fantastic. Maybe zoom in, see how that goes. Some of these inks are a real challenge. Get my hand out of the way. All right. The extra fine, it's a lighter tone than we saw with the 1.1. Slightly lighter, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, little bit of shading. We have spots of shading. The beginning of the starts very light, and then the rest of the word is dark. In brown, it's all a nice dark tone, except for the W is a little bit lighter. And Fox starts light and gets dark, so we do get some nice shading throughout here. 9 seconds to dry. Medium goes back to the darker tone that we saw with the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and there is no shading in this writing. It took 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine showed us a little color variation. We do see some color variation, not as much as we see in the scrubby. The medium shows us some color variation. We saw absolutely none in the writing sample. The smear test, I believe you could recover this without too much difficulty if you smeared it. So life paper. I enjoy life paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. Now I wonder if some of the shade went away because of the tone of the paper. Or this really hasn't shaded a whole lot. I feel like it's a green, so you would expect that greens can shade really well. The little bits of shade that we did see in some of the writing earlier kind of go away here. Extra fine, slightly lighter tone. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. There's no shading in this writing. 6 seconds to dry. So where we had shade in the extra fine, we really don't get to have it anymore. The medium gets to be a darker tone like what we saw with the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 6 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows us color variation, and it lied. Like on camera, the K looks a little darker. It is not in person. The medium showed us no color variation. We didn't get any in the smear test. You could likely recover this without any difficulties if you smeared it. So Apica, another paper I greatly enjoy. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, no halo, no sheen. Light spots of shading occur. The T looks slightly darker, the S looks slightly darker, and that's about it. So there's a couple spots. The extra fine is a lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and, again, a couple words, or a couple spots, like the X in Fox is a little bit darker
The right side of the Z is a little bit darker, and that's like it. 5 seconds to dry. The medium gets to be a darker tone, the same dark tone that we saw with the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 8 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for the extra fine shows us color variation. We really didn't see any up here. The medium shows us none. We got none. And a smear test, you could likely recover it. Franklin-Christoph paper. Franklin-Christoph gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. All we get for this is a very nice color. The extra fine is slightly lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 3 seconds to dry. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine shows us color variation. We didn't get any. The smear test the scrubby for the medium shows us none. We didn't get any. The smear test said you could likely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like the Atramentis Mint Turquoise, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I wanted something that didn't draw attention away from this green because it is a nice tone, but I just wanted something muted, dusty even. I went with a dusty gray. Birmingham Pen Company's Jeff Goldblum Independence Gray. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of the Atramentis Mint Turquoise? You see quite a bit of variation in color depending on your nib. It gets darker when you're using broader, wetter nibs, which is nice because I did not care for the tones so much in extra fines. It was just, for me, if I use an extra fine and especially a drier pen, I don't think I could be happy with this ink looking at a page of writing. However, with a wetter pen, and I suspect even with a wet fine, it should do perfectly fine. This is a very nice mint turquoise that's much more mint than turquoise. Not very much turquoise here. Thanks for watching.